With the full reveal of the Warhammer 3 map, we have gotten a ton of spicy locations to look over in the coming months until the full release of the game in February of 2022. Now, I've done a two-part series in the past exploring what races could inhabit what parts of the Darklands. But we can see now that the Game 3 map is not going to comprise solely of the Darklands. We'll have the lands of Cathay, the Chaos Wastes in their entirety, and a huge portion of the Old World coupled with the Mountains of Morn and the Darklands. This is a far larger scope than originally intended, and it does deliver a map that is somewhat skewed, perhaps in an attempt to dodge places like Nippon or Ind. Maybe even Koresh. But in this video today, we're going to explore the campaign map and discuss what races could possibly reside where on this map. Now, if you remember the Warhammer 2 marketing ramp up, we got a map revealing all the locations of both the starting factions and any NPC factions. I'm hoping we get the same thing for Warhammer 3, as it will be fun to kind of cross-reference this video with that hopeful eventual map. So the way I'm going to do this is by going through each race and faction, as well as their possible locations on the map. You can also navigate to each race that interests you the most by simply using the chapters in the timeline and the description. And this will be a very low-tech presentation, so just as a heads up. I've slammed all the faction icons onto the map using Photoshop, so some icons will be slightly smaller than others to make room, and I'll just be navigating around the map while I talk. Again, I do apologize for the low-tech method here, but I figured this gives a more organic way of discussing what I am talking about. So as always, guys, before we get started, if you end up enjoying the video, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Also, if you've not yet pre-ordered Warhammer 3, you can do so using my link to my Nexus Store in the pinned comment and description. You'll get a Steam key directly from the developer, and it is a great way to support the channel. Well, let's dive in on Warhammer races on the new campaign map in Total War Warhammer 3. So to start us off, we're going to take a look at the map in its entirety and talk about the Warhammer 3 races and their starting locations across the map. And you'll see, like I've said, there are a lot of varying sizes of everything, and for the most part of any faction I was unaware of or didn't have an existing icon, I've just grabbed something from the internet here, right? Like you get an example for the Chaos Dwarfs right here. So taking a look at the map, starting with the Chaos Demons, we know where Tzeentch starts for sure. We know that Kairos Fateweaver starts over here in the Eastern Steppes near the Road of Damnation, and he's going to be not allied, but he's going to start right next to Kazog, another Warriors of Chaos faction, and the Dreaded Woe, which I believe is to the east. I'm sorry, the Dreaded Woe is to the west, and the Kazog here is to the east, and I believe there's a faction allied with Khorne or something of the sort, but he's going to be pretty much right over here. Now, for Nurgle, we don't know if he's going to start at the Cliffs of Death, but if we look at the mechanics blog that was released for Nurgle, we got a preview of what the buildings are going to look like for Nurgle, and it showed the settlement for the Cliffs of Death. So I've popped Nurgle right here. Now for Slaanesh and for Khorne, of course, I'm saying the parent god, of course, this is Kairos Fateweaver over here. This is Kugoth Plaguefather. This would be Inkari, and this would be Skarbrand. I've put them in their respective Chaos Realms because we don't know how the Chaos Realms are going to play into the game, and we don't know where those two factions are going to be starting on the map. I would assume maybe that Khorne or Skarbrand would probably start somewhere over in this region to kind of add a little fire into the conflict with Skarbrand and with Kislev, more than likely, and Slaanesh might be somewhere over in this region. Just as me wanting to put Slaanesh somewhere else. I'm not really overly sure, to be totally honest with you, but that's my speculation right there. So that's the Chaos Demons, but we now have the locations for Zhao Ming and Miao Ying. They're both right here in this location for Cathay. We get Miao over here, and we get Zhao right here. And then for Kislev, we have the city of Kislev proper right here in the Eastern Oblast, Northern Oblast kind of conjunction point. And then we get Castle Alexandrinov over here for Kosteltian. And we've known those for some time now at this point, so it's kind of easy to pinpoint. We know where Katarine will be and where Kosteltian will be. We got, again, Miao Ying, Zhao Ming, And we have all of our other characters. Now, the only two that we haven't talked about now are the Ogre Kingdoms. We know that Greasus Goldtooth will have the Great Hall of Greasus over on the Ivory Road. And this might actually be right here. This is the Ivory Road. So it might be more over on this edge of the mountains, if I can remember what it looked like in the 8th edition map. So maybe more right here to be total proper. Now, with Scrag, we have him in the Gristle Valley in the Northern Grey Mountains. So all the way over here in the Old World. So he is going to be swinging in a whole different land than the rest of the Warhammer 3 factions for the most part. And you'll see here that this portion of the Old World is going to be very, very jammed up. So just wanted to quickly go over the Warhammer 3 starting locations. I guess too, it's worth noting that I've put this large icon for the Chaos Dwarfs over here because this is pretty much the entire land in which the Chaos Dwarfs would inhabit. So I don't know how they're going to do that. That might be Dwarf Rebels, it might be Greenskins, it might be Skaven. There's any number of things. I mean, you could even have independent factions of Nurgle over in this region. There's a lot of different things. And we've covered this all in our Darklands video that I'll link in the upper right-hand video, or I'm sorry, upper right-hand corner, in which case we talked about a possible locations for a lot of factions that are not just simply Chaos Dwarfs in the heart of the Darklands right there. Now let's move into the Empire to talk about some of our favorite bros from the Old World. So for the Empire, I think it's kind of obvious where we would see them, right? We're going to go ahead and zoom in here using the power of technology. And I think we can tell that the majority of the Empire lands would be, well, the Empire. A majority of it is still represented on the map. Midland, Nordland, Hawkland, Othland, Telebuckland, Visenland, Styland, all of it is there. Reichland's even right here at this very bottom portion. And I've put their corresponding Elector County banners in their place. The only two things I'd say on this map that might be unique are a possible placement of a cult of Ulrich led by an R. Ulrich, which would be very interesting, a very cool Midland kind of offshoot faction. I know for a long time they've said that Boris Todbringer is getting his day, so maybe this could play into a dual Lord pack, adding in Boris Todbringer as a full-on faction legendary lord with an R. Ulrich leading the cult of Ulrich, which could be somewhere else on the map. But I wanted to put these two icons together, made a little sense here. Now, if I move over here to the east, we have Pig Barter, which is a very important location on the route into the Mountains of Morn, across the Ivory Road, and then west over here into the Old World. It's that kind of conjunction point in the Darklands, and it is a human settlement. I've put the banner of Reichland here because maybe it is just simply a Reichland holding point until a possible Dogs of War DLC, which would remove, I think, this and add a Dog of War faction to Pig Barter, and that's how we would get a Dog of War representation in the Warhammer 3 campaign map. Now, if we're thinking about the quote-unquote Immortal Empires map, which I've dubbed as the combined map for Warhammer 3, then it would be obvious that the Dogs of War would be Tilia and Astalia, and they'd be in their respective locations, so on and so forth. This is, again, just my way of saying, here's how the Empire's Dog of War faction, if it would indeed follow into the the Empire like faction banner mechanic and everything of the sort, could be represented on the map as a placeholder. Let's now pivot into another faction. And we have a very famous holdover in the Dwarfs. So a lot of places are still very well represented on the map here. Yet again, we get Ungrim here in Karakadrin. We get Zufbar over here in Blackwater. We get Krakadrak over here in the Giant Home Mountains. Karak Ziflin in the Northern Grey Mountains. And then we also have, Karak Norn and Karak Asgaraz over here in the Southern Grey Mountains. Now, as far as locations when it comes to Warhammer 3, we have some fun, spicy stuff to talk about, because we could have Clan Helheim over here in the Mountains of Morn, and they would possibly be focused on retaking Karak Azorn, Karak Vrog, Karak Krakatan, the Hidden Horde of Hrak, Opalai, locations that were part of an Eastern expedition of dwarfs. Now, we know, of course, the lore behind the Chaos Dwarfs, right, and how they become corrupted by a Chaos Demon in Hashut. But there is still expeditions that happen into the eastern lands of the Mountains of Morn, because it's still considered a mountain range just filled to the brim with gold. So this kind of presence here of Clan Helheim would be pretty fun. Also, Carrick Doom could be present here in the Road of Skulls. This would give some faction diversity to the northern portion of the map by comparison to the southern portion, southwestern portion, which is just extremely diverse, right? And of course, we're going to get into this in more detail in a bit, but I think pushing dwarfs into other regions, especially the Mountains of Morn, fits from a very fun, flavorful point of view. And we know that the dwarfs had those expeditions eastward, and it could be a lot of fun to kind of spice up the playstyle over here for Cathay, for the ogres, and for the chaos demons. So it's only fitting now that we pivot into one of the factions, I'd say, is one of the arch nemesis of the dwarfs next to the Skaven in the Greenskins. And there are some presence of the Greenskins already on the Mortal Empires map in the Darklands, right? We already get the presence of the Greenskins in the Wolflands and in the Blasted Wastes. We get Black Fang. Also, there's another location that they could possibly be in the far west over here. I've put them at this portion of the Witch's Wood, but the Black Pit is more down over here. So that'll kind of just be in a Nordland, Witch's Wood, Midland area over in right around here. So that kind of gives them a presence on the map as well in the western regions. Now, another location that could be kind of a little contested here is Azag's Bone Rattlers. Now, they could be in the Troll Country or in High Pass. I put them on both locations here on the map. Again, giving some diversity to a possible playthrough with Greenskins. Now, how to push them further east is they do have a presence in the Bone Road. There is an excerpt here from the Scouring of the Stone Lands where the Withered Eye tribe had a presence here in the Bone Road. This would give Greenskins something to, or I'm sorry, Cathay something to fight against as far as Greenskins go, adding into some a little bit more of that diversity in this region. What I'm finding from a lot of the stuff from just kind of divulging and placing things on this map is that if I zoom out here, this is going to be, I guess, the way you kind of envision Lustria was at the start of Warhammer 2. Lustria was pretty sparse with its starting locations of legendary lords and factions, and it became a region that is now super dense with factions and legendary lords. So I think that this whole kind of swath here, from the northernmost portion of the Chaos Wastes up to the northernmost portions of the Mountains of Morn, where the Hobgoblin Khanate would be, which would be right around here, is going to start getting filled in with some sort of fun variation of either existing factions, some sort of NPC variations, or in the future DLCs to come, they'll start to get placements of either representations of other factions or a brand new one being added in, whatever the case is. So I think when you look at this kind of huge swath right here, you can envision a little bit more fun of just random things coming into it from every angle. The next faction, the Vampire Counts, have some pretty interesting locations. Now, obviously, I think we know that Sylvania would have the presence of the Vampire Counts, led by some form of the von Karsteins, right? But we also have the Silver Pinnacle, right? Neferata's faction, which could be present here in the High Pass or in the World's Edge Mountains. I know that this is like a really low quality version of the map as far as its high pixel count, or its low pixel count actually. So I apologize for this looking so blurred in the video. I'm looking at an actual unblown up version on the right side of my screen, so I can kind of exactly correlate where that is. But this is the World's Edge Mountains, right? The World's Edge Mountains. We also would probably have Kemmler's Barrow Legion over here on the far left side of the map at the Blackstone Post in the northern Grey Mountains. But there are some locations that could possibly be expanded upon. We could have Castle Drachenfels, which is, Northern Grey Mountains as well, and have that kind of come into the game with either Drachenfels or the Nameless leading that faction, if it were to ever come in. Just kind of something I wanted to point out. It'd be somewhere around there, somewhere. But another location that is possible too is in the Mountains of Morn. We have Mangari the Old, and here's just a really quick little excerpt here, but somewhere in the depths of the Mountains of Morn, the vampire Mangari the Old unearths a gemstone crown, allowing him to commune with the great god of Tzeentch. The vampire strikes a pact with the great sorcerer. For the next century, combined armies of demons and the undead assail ogre and chaos dwarf strongholds. So that would be a really cool way to just kind of slip in a Vampire Counts faction. Or it could even be like one of the independent factions that we see roving around in Warhammer 2. That is a combined Tzeentch and Vampire Counts faction, just simply going around. That could be a really fun way to just have that represented in the map from both a lore standpoint and adding a little cultural a little faction diversity in this region. Now, it is worth noting that this portion of the map does not necessarily go south and west far enough to give us a Nagashazar, or let alone a Desolation of Nagash. So it's interesting to me, or Nagashazar. So it's interesting to me that the Blasted Lands and the Wolflands are as far south as this goes, because this would otherwise, I think, be the Plain of Bones right here. And if that were true, that would give us the presence of the Fortress of Vorag in this location, because we already get that represented in Warhammer 2, right? We get this fortress here that gives us a unique building for, what's it called? 4 vampire counts, called the Tower of the Bloody Tooth. And that was the name for Vorag Bloody Tooth, one of the Strigoi vampires that led a massive invasion across the World's Edge Mountains into the locations of the former Strigoi Great City that I cannot think of off the top of my head. But either way, if this is the Plain of Bones, you could maybe see a vampire counts faction starting down here as well to represent a Vorag Bloody Tooth faction of some shape or form. Next up here, though, we have one of the 2 big factions I think that'll be represented in the northern portions of the map in the Warriors of Chaos. Now, we know that the Warriors of Chaos are represented across the map in a bunch of different types of factions, right? Like I was talking about earlier, we have the Khazog somewhere over here and the Dreaded Woe somewhere over here. And those are Warriors of Chaos factions that are simply just generic factions placed around the map. And I think that for a Warriors of Chaos faction with respective legendary lords, we could see this probably all across the Chaos Waste. Sigvald, Kolek, Archaon, whoever it needs to be. Maybe Archaon isn't here yet, or maybe he does jump in as some sort of grand event that would trigger a Chaos invasion, whatever it is from the north. But you pretty much have this entire swath to take advantage of and say, hey, yeah, that's where the Warriors of Chaos are in whatever shape or form. So I imagine that they're going to have their own kind of specific factions or something of the sort. And we're going to see a lot of generic factions, like I said, like the Dreaded Woe, that are going to just be settled around the map to give us some antagonists for the new campaign here for Warhammer 3. Jumping back into the old world, we have Corone for the Bretonnians. I think this is a pretty easy one to assume. Maybe it would just kind of be some sort of holdover faction, something that just is present there to hold the location, because we do have a Marienburg right here on the map as well, kind of creating that same antagonistic relationship between these 2 factions that has existed since Warhammer 2 begat. But in the eastern regions, we would have the possible errantry faction or some sort of faction that exists here from Baldrin of Brionne. We know that there was a Bretonnian expedition or errantry war out to the east over here, and it would make a lot of sense. We talked about this in our Darklands video as well, pointing this as a possible location for Bretonnians to exist, and I think it'd be, again, a really cool way to spice up the amount of factions out this way. But these are the only 2 ones that kind of come to mind for bringing Bretonnia onto the Warhammer 3 map. We're back into the Chaos Wastes. We have the Beastmen this time. And the Beastmen, I think, are going to be sprinkled everywhere, or at least I just kind of assumed that they would be, especially, of course, in the old world. I put an icon here, but Middenland, Ostland, Talabukland, the Haunted Forest, which is not over here, but all of these regions could house the Beastmen in some way, shape, or form, right? The Drakvald Forest, all this stuff. But now as we move eastward, we do get the Bone Road over in this location, as well as the Haunted Forest. And we have evidence of these locations being present with Beastmen. And we know that the Beastmen inhabit a large portion of the east and southern portions of the Warhammer map. So having them present here in some way, shape, or form is not too far off from what we could expect. And then again, with the Chaos Wastes, just put them wherever you want on the Chaos Wastes. They can just have a presence there. Let them do whatever they need to do. Just have them be stand-in factions, whatever the case is. Now, of course, this is not going to be coming in the game, but I would love to see some form of variation upon the Beastmen. We know that in certain locations, like in Ind, in Koresh, we get different styles of Beastmen, and I would just love to see that represented. We won't. I know we won't, right? Unless Creative Assembly decides to go, hey, yeah, cool, here's a DLC on something like that. It'll probably just be something for a mod of some sort, but still, it'd be a great way to kind of distinguish the Beastmen from, say, Haunted Forest versus the typical Beastmen we expect in the old world. Speaking of that old world, let's talk about the Wood Elves. Now, the Witch's Wood is the home of Laurelorn Forest, so I think that it would be safe to say we should expect Laurelorn Elves there as well. But we could also perhaps see Wood Elves represented over here in the Dookless Forest, which someone had told me it means like haunted spirit forest or something like that in Russian, or like a loose, like bastardized translation of it, which is really cool. So having Wood Elves here in the northeastern portion of the Kislev lands could be a lot of fun. And then again, down over here in the Haunted Forest, again, something we talked about in our Darklands video is the prevalence of elves on this kind of coastline here. And it would again make sense to have some sort of presence of the Wood Elves in this region. Now, rounding off our last Warhammer 1 faction, we have got Norsca, and I think Norsca makes the most sense to be in the regions that it is, right? The Norscan region, which would be right here, and then the southern parts of the Northern Chaos Wastes, perhaps over right here in the Plain of Illusions, the Cold Mires, stuff like that. I could imagine them being around this location. Now, I've put Norsca here. It's worth mentioning that we might see some sort of stand-in Kurgan or hung or whatever it is faction somewhere on these regions of the map. But I think for right now, just looking at just straight Norscan, we could expect them right here. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they started to come over into this region over here, something of the sort, maybe over here as well. But that kind of squares away our game 1 faction. So let's now pivot into some game 2 factions. Now, the first one, my favorite, is going to be the High Elves, and this is a pretty quick one. There is the City of Spires, which would be kind of further down this coast, but I place it right over here on the furthest eastern edge of the map, right at the tail end of the Haunted Forest. The City of Spires leads into Ind, so this would be that location for the High Elves on the map. And talking about the darker cousins of the High Elves, we have the Dark Elves, and they have some good possible locations. I mean, Lokir Fellheart could start over here. We could have the Shardlands as a location way to the north, kind of as a location that would be kind of correspond to the northern regions of Naggaroth, right up by those watchtowers. And this may be where Malice could be. Malice Darkblade could be in this region over here. Again, giving some spicy diversity in this region. Maybe he's doing some sort of quest for shards of the demon, right? Whatever he has to do. Also, the Sea of Dread here for Rekarth down over at the very bottom. Could be another location for some possible Dark Elves. You know, the cool thing about Dark Elves is that they've got these... they've got these Corsair ships. While they do have these ships, they're known for going all over the place with the Black Arcs, right? And we know that we get Lokir Fellheart in Ind. We get all Dark Elves all over the place, raiding any coastline. So as long as there's a coastline, you could just easily assume that there could be a Dark Elf presence there. I think putting them up in this region here by the Shardlands, kind of having this be that region that corresponds to the northernmost region of Naggaroth could be a very fun way to imbue Malice Darkblade, or I mean maybe even Malekith, which might be way too much of a stretch, but still envisioning them there could be a pretty good bet. And even in that same breath, you could say that there could be possible Beastmen up in this location as well. But let's move over to another faction now in the Lizardmen. And there's really only 2 prevalent locations in my mind for the Lizardmen. We have the Dragon Isles over here, where, I mean, something worth noting, in the campaign, Dragon Isles are where Malice Darkblade starts. So you could say that Malice Darkblade is here rather than Lokir Fellheart. I put Lokir Fellheart there because it's closer to Ind, and I put Malice up here because it makes it a little fun. But Dragon Isles, we know that to be a location where I want to say feral, might not be the best word for it, but feral lizardmen, because these are the lizardmen that are so far removed. They've lost their slan, they've lost control of everything. So they're kind of over here in this region inhabiting the Dragon Isles. And then I put Oxyodal right here because I didn't have a set location for him. He can be anywhere on the map attacking chaos, right? I think less so in the old world, maybe. Maybe you can make an argument he's over here in this region as some sort of offshoot from Albion. But I think kind of putting him up here in this northern region gives him a little bit of spice and adds a way to bring Lizardmen up to this top portion of the map as a possible fighting opponent for both Tzeentch and Nurgle as far as locations we know that they exist. Until we find out where Khorne and Slaanesh are, you know, this might totally throw Oxyotl for a loop on where he might start, but just some supposed locations. I mean, everyone else is based around their temple city, and Oxyotl has got this need to fight demons, right? So putting him in the Chaos Wastes makes a lot of sense. Moving into the Verminous Horde, we've got the Skaven, and I've zoomed out here because there are just so many possible locations for the Skaven to start. And I think we've got a lot of really good big ones, right? We've got the more obvious ones in Clan Moulder, right? Thrott's Clan Moulder over here in Hell Pit. Go ahead and zoom in now on that one. That's, I think, a pretty standout location. I think this is roughly where Hell Pit is. It kind of gets blurry on this portion of the map. I know it's around Troll Clan. Actually, I think it might be right around here, to be totally honest. I think I moved it in the wrong mountain range. But either way, Clan Moulder would be at Hell Pit. And then looking over here on this side of the map, we get Snickich and the Warpstone Desert, just to kind of add Clan Eshin into the mix for Cathay. They have a very big relationship with both Cathay and Nippon as to how they learn their assassin capabilities, Clan Eshin that is. And we know that Clan Eshin actually has a lot of dealings with Cathay in a lot of the expanded lore, coming in as not necessarily an ambassador, but someone that helps out the Monkey King. And they have a large undercity under Wei Jin, and all of these things that have been either retconned or kind of not really directly addressed in the more recent lore. We do know in the older lore they did have that presence. And we know that from the descriptions of the Warpstone Desert that there are, I think it says like Greenskins, Ogres, and Skaven to the west in this region. So I've slapped Clan Eshin here. Now for Tretch's Clan Rictus, I've put him back at his namesake in Crookback Mountain in the Wolflands. We know this to be the case. Clan Grittis over here in Seepgore, and I've just placed it roughly over here in High Pass. It's not necessarily precisely where it would be, but I just put over there next to the High Pass title. We have another one that's good here with Clan Ferric in Cragmere over in the Blackwater. I think actually my Cragmere might be more of this region, but Blackwater is the overall province in which he would remain. And then Clan Crooktail I've put over here in the Northern Wastes, just to give a little fun, just to add some more presence of Skaven in these regions. We know them to be kind of spread across a more diverse location anyway with Crooktail, so I've just put them here. Now, there could be any number of other generic Skaven clans just smashed anywhere on the map. And there's other ones that we've already established as having specific locations, right? Like Clan Vulcan and so on and so forth. But Clan Vulcan is actually further south than this. But still, either way, what I don't really want to see is what we got with Warhammer 2, where Skaven just fill every single part of the map that is not inhabited by a dedicated faction. It was kind of fun in Warhammer 2, but it kind of got out of control towards the end of it, where it's like, okay, you can't even do the ruins portion of the game, exploring ruins and going through the mini games and stuff like that, because there's just Skaven everywhere. I would like there to be a more diverse amount of generic factions on the board, rather than just simply being Skaven. Make it Beastmen, make it unsettled warriors of chaos, make it anything, demons, whatever the case is. I just don't want to run into heaps upon heaps of Skaven, and I think I've kind of condensed them in the place that make the most sense for them on the map. Now our last two I'm just going to lump together in the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Coast, because I don't really have many good places for them. I have got right over here though, in the Mountains of Morn, the Carrion Crags for Numos, so Rakoth III of Numos, and Imrathepis of Numos over there in the Mountains of Morn. Again, a fun location as well too, add some good diversity. And for the Vampire Coast, I've put them in two different locations in either the Sea of Chaos or the Sea of Claws. They've talked about how Van Geist's Shade Wraith came from the Realm of Chaos after the crew attempted to sail north to seize immortality. So this would be sailing north into these two locations. So if they wanted to add Van Geist into the map, you could put him right there. Just the same, you could just simply put Vampire Coast there in a generic faction of some way, shape, or form. But those are my locations now for all of the Warhammer 2 and the Warhammer 1 races, and we've discussed the Warhammer 3 races here as well. So go ahead and let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you feel that some of these locations are pretty on point? Do you feel that things would shift around a little bit more? Of course, we don't know what's going to happen, right? And I'm really excited to finally get that map and kind of cross-reference. Oh shit, so they actually see this being here rather than there. Or maybe even, you know, this blows us out of the water and they're going to be adding in more Norscan factions. Remember, there is a Norscan rework coming. They've said that it is going to happen. So that could mean that while there might be the presence of both Throg and Big Daddy Wolfric, they might be adding in 2, 3, 4, or who would add in 4 legendary lords? I'm on crack cocaine over here. But either way, they could spice up and add in another generic legendary lord, like Surtha Ek, my least favorite man in the world. But still, I'd love to get your opinion here, guys, on what you think could be different with this map, what you think works the best with it. I'm really excited to find out more. In fact, getting that campaign flyover was, for me personally, one of the most exciting things to hear about since the Ogre Kingdoms, and since then, Warhammer 3's full announcement. Because now we can finally see the map we're going to take a part of, or take part in, and we're going to see how this possibly plays out. There's so much fun lore to jump into with some of these regions. There's so much fun things to kind of extrapolate and speculate about, like this location over here. Chaos Dwarfs, what the hell is going to be there? When are the Chaos Dwarfs coming? Are the Chaos Dwarfs coming? Like, all these fun things can kind of come up by just simply seeing this map. And that too, of course, is wondering what the hell the Chaos Realms are going to play into this. How are we going to get there? How can you even get there? Like, what the hell is going to be the thing with that location? But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. I will put this picture in the description, the pinned comment and on the Reddit post, so you guys can have fun with it, tear it apart, swipe it all away if you want and do your own map, whatever it is, but have fun with it, guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.